I've seen some potato wedges there and a chicken.
Yes.
Is that what you have prepared for us?
Yes. That's lunch for today.
That's lunch for us today. Oh, really? This is a very delicious. You can see? Sounds nice.
Thank you very much.
Now, Willie,
Yes.
what were the lessons you learned in all your dairy farming journey? What are these lessons you have learned in terms of the milk market, the input supply, the overall farm management? What are these lessons you learned?
I think in a nutshell, the one big thing is there's always the right thing to do, and then there's other things that people are doing. First of all, one thing I've realized is a cow is a ruminant, and ruminants do things a particular way. You cannot make a cow eat meat, for example, and get anything relevant from it. If you do the basics right from when you're conceptualizing the farm itself, you end up avoiding a lot of problems. I'll give you a very good example. So you're starting your farm today. You don't have a future vision. How many cows do you eventually want to keep? So where you site your dairy unit, it forces you in 4 years' time when you're expanding to either demolish it, resite it, and those kinds of problems. How do you think, okay, fine, so I have 50 acres of land that I can allocate to this project. 50 acres, in theory, should be able to support 50 cows, in theory. So technically, I should be, to get the full potential of these 50 acres, I should be thinking 50 cows or production units. So where am I going to site this such that if I start with 10, I can grow till 50 and it is expandable? Things like those. Because you're not finding you spend so much money just trying to remodel to squeeze in cows. You go to some sheds where you find heifers are being wrongly grouped with milking cows. Why? Because there is no space. Or milking cows are being pushed into the heifer unit. Why? Because the milking herd unit is full, and those kinds of things. So once you're able to conceptualize, and the things that determine the scope of your vision are the resources that you have available. Number one always is land and or capital, one of those two. So for example, if you have enough capital to put silage bunkers and fill them up that can support 50 cows, then start thinking of designing for 50, for example. That kind of thinking. So right from the thought process itself, it has to be right. And as the vision is being set, it needs to fit within certain boundaries. Going forward, so the cows come, how do you take care of them? Just get the basics right. Feed them according to what the cow requires. Don't feed a milking cow on a heifer diet, for example. It's going to waste away. Don't feed a heifer on a milking cow diet. It's going to be overconditioned. Those are basics. There are some basics which I mean, you just flip the coin this way, it goes haywire. And then that brings another set of metabolic and reproduction issues and those kinds of things. So for me, my big thing to dairy farmers is do the right thing at the right stage. Time for setup, do the setup related issues properly. If you're going to plant your own fodder, for example, why are you rushing to buy cows when there is no fodder that's ready? What are the cows going to eat? They can't eat that germinating crop. So stop. Don't even build. Don't buy any heifer. First, let's do crop husbandry.
But Willie, naleta ng'ombe inipatie maziwa. Cows can feed anything and give me milk.
Oh,
you mean I have my Excel. I know how to use Excel.
No problem.
A cow will give me 20 liters. I'll sell it at 40 shilling. I have 800. I only need to start with the 10 cows. I have 8,000 in a day. I have 240,000 in a month. What are you telling me to do all this planning?
Big question becomes, what is it costing you to make that 240,000? Probably the same 240.
Really. I need money.
No problem.
I just applied a loan just the other day.
Yeah.
Now you are telling me now that I should think from 10 years from now where I want my vision to be. Then I start working from that vision downwards. But me, I have money. Unataka kumaanisha ng'ombe itanishinda kiakili.
Sana.
So you learned cows can be more wiser than me as a farmer.
They'll take you to school, eh? I mean, I've had my own Excel projections. I delete the file. It so doesn't make sense. Why? Two things you got wrong. Just you assumed two things. Maybe nutritional value of the crop. I see this fallacy with maize. With farmers these days. Just because it's maize and I silaged it, perfect feed. Ask guys, listen, if you're ensiling, say, 30 tons, what will it cost you when that silage is ready to take a sample and take it to the lab? Let it be analyzed so that you know you have 30 tons of X. Because the lab will tell you from this 1 to 5 kilo sample you have brought, there's so much protein, there's so much energy, there's so much fiber, there's so much this. You can then extrapolate it to 30 tons. You can literally know how many kilograms of crude protein you have in that silage bunker. Then on this other side, you know what your cows need. So you know what your nutritional shortfall is.
Really, what you are trying to tell me is that one of the biggest lessons you learned, you plan the future, but begin now.
Yes.
The future begins now.
Now.
And you are telling me that if you invested heavily on lab work, you wouldn't have ended your journey so soon.
Yes.
Or probably you wouldn't have paid expensively
the school fees.
The
school fees was very expensive.
So what other than that lesson that you learned? Especially I heard you talking more about labor. And how the labor, you are in a matatu, you started thinking this, that guy, I might get the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. I'm losing a job from the other end. What are the lessons you learned from that?
I think, in summary, I can say, you can teach a human being to do many things, but you can't teach them discipline. You can't teach them responsibility. There are some things some people are born with and others are not born with. You can have a genius guy, but he just doesn't have self-control. He will never progress. A situation which calls for you to sacrifice for later, it will never happen. Ever happen. There are some people who don't know the difference between their needs and wants. So you have this worker, he works very hard and everything, but he's always on your neck. Advance. How do you even plan your financials. You're probably even coming for 2 advances in a month. By the end of the month, if his salary was 10,000, you're paying him 1,500. So situations like those get that guy frustrated. He brings his frustration to your cows. Kutandika mang'ombe na viboko, ng'ombe inaanza kukata maziwa ikinamuogopa. Brings another whole set of nonsense. If you can get a discipline, he may not be experienced. So it calls for you, the farmer, to know these things. You are the first guy as the farmer to go to school. If a farmer walks out, you should be able to run that farm. At least for 3 days. Maybe you'll have a casual helping you out for some of the heavier things. But you know, hii ng'ombe inafaa kukula silage kiasi gani, if it's being mixed with hay ni kiasi gani, blah 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 blah, concentrate kiasi hii hivi. Masaa ya kukamuliwa ni this and that and that. There are people who don't know.
Really, me, I'm an investor. I've invested my money there.
You continue letting your money do the work for you, eh?
No. Why do you want me to be there day to day? All I know what happens there. Me, I've invested my money. I want, at the end of the month, I want my money in the bank. I want my profit. I've invested.
So you go invest in the stock exchange if that's the kind of work you think dairy farming is.
No, really.
Peleka pesa stock exchange, weka hapo, wenda tia maraundi zako, atakwambia mwisho wa mwezi mea mine. Weka fixed deposit.
Niachane na ng'ombe.
Wachana nayo kama wezi.
So I need an employee. The first qualification should be to be able to ascertain is a disciplined person who has self-control, experience. Tutaweka sisi wenyewe.
Exactly. We can teach.
But if that one lacks,
we will teach them how to take care of cows. As long as he's willing to learn, he will learn. Because surely, what has the cow changed? Since the beginning of wherever cows came from, what has it changed? It still has 4 stomachs, and small intestines, large intestines, and 4 legs, and a head and horns and a tail.
And there are specific skills, acquired skills in school that I really need in that dairy farm. At what point, or what do you feel like, or if you are to progress with that dairy farm, at what point will you have brought in a farm manager, a professional farm manager?
You know, for me, since I was a full-time farmer, I don't think there was need for it. No, there was no need for it. And then also I had a big network. I mean, people like Mwalimu Njuguna, I could speak to, Mrs. Gishinga, I could speak to, and they would, kind of like just get your mind into the right direction. Earlier on, they helped me a lot with that. Yeah? Correct a lot of wrong thinking, assumptions, and things like those. I really wish, even if you're a telephone farmer, know the feeding basics, especially nutrition. You get that wrong, you're done. There's no cow that produces milk or nothing.
From the lessons that you learned, how do you describe how the market was, or maybe what opt to be the appropriate way in reference to the milk market?
I look at it 2 ways. And I think it's all hinged on production cost. First of all farmers, and I'll encourage you farmers, you need to know your production cost. Every liter of milk leaving your gate, what has it cost you to produce? Because if you get that wrong, you get the market wrong. So you may be producing at 35 shillings a liter. And the closest market is buying at 36 shillings a liter. Is that truly sustainable?
You're making only a shilling.
That is if your mathematics are spot on. If there's a plus or minus in your mathematics, even that shilling can disappear.
That's very true.
You get? So if you can be able to understand the production cost matrix for your farm, then it can help you determine which market to target.
So the market is always there. You can target it depending on your production cost.
Yes. There's a guy I was speaking to a few weeks back. He lives in South Sea. So he was telling me about the Somali community there and their need for fresh milk. Good fresh milk, good quality fresh milk. So he was thinking of starting a farm in somewhere near Bisil or Kajiado or something. But the thing I pointed out to him is, how do you transport that milk every day to bring it there and some other logistics? But it was a good idea. But what I took away from that is there is a market and there is potential. So I remember telling him, you may be better placed if you're still going to do all those kilometers from Bisil. Why keep cows? Bisil itself is a challenging environment. Why keep cows? Let's look for somewhere where you can get bulk milk, because you know the market. If they're buying at 60 and you can get milk at 40 or 45 shillings a litre, then it will make economic sense. Just make sure your milk board, dairy board licensing is done, cess and everything. You'll more or less be able to supply that market and remain maybe with 6-7 shillings a litre as profit net at the end of it all.
Wow, that's a very amazing input. Do you know your production cost? Then don't discuss the market. About the input supply, you'll wake up at, you'll go to 10 p.m. to Roasters, EABL, you'll go to Del Monte, some crazy hours. You'll go somewhere to Jamhuri, looking, I don't know, for minerals, all those kind of things.
Forgetting Salga.
And also the Salga, the Kagri, collecting all kind of sort of madness. What were those lessons you learned? And what protocol do you think a farmer can put in place just to mitigate all those kind of, crazy thinking and practices?
Projection, number one. If you have a herd of X number of animals, we know we can calculate, you and I can calculate to the individual cow what it can feed in a day, or what it requires in a day. A farmer needs to have a cycle and say, either you have an annual cycle, and this is for fodder. You buy your bulk fodder or you grow your bulk fodder and keep it. So you are guaranteed this herd of X can be fed for the next 365 days. And the question I always ask farmers is this. If I was to give you a wall calendar, that's January, February, March, one big wall calendar, all the days of the year, 2022 now, there. And I blindfold you, and I give you 3 darts, here kutupa. And I tell you, throw at the calendar. So you throw 1, 2, 3. And I tell you to remove your blindfold. So maybe we have March 17th, we have July 4th, maybe September 10th. You should be able to tell me those 3 dates, exactly what your cows are going to be eating next year on September 10th.
Can you pose a challenge to the farmer to check on their birthday date and ask, as you are celebrating that cake, are you sure what your cows will feed? Ama utawagawia keki.
I know the extra sugar in the cake might bring energy values up.
And also the wheat.
Yes, and the wheat, yeah. But that's a very
and there
good
is
question.
yeast in that cake.
Yes, but that's a very, very good question. And you should be able to ask yourself, any one given time. In fact, I really wish it would be a 3-year calendar. In the next 3, you can have a 3-year wall calendar you throw, and one that lands in 2023 or 2024. On that date, in 2024, you know what your cows are feeding. That is with the most ideal scenario for me.
Now, wow. If you are to compare dairy farming those years, 2011, now you're in 2022, what has the dynamics around that?
What I like now is the science is better understood. You'd sit and talk to, these grandfathers, gukas. I tell you, hapana usifanye hiyo ng'ombe hivi, fanya hivi. The funny thing is they couldn't explain to you why. They don't know why. They just know cows are done that. So they may be doing something that's 60% effective. The 40% that they are losing out is because they don't understand. They would have been able, this 40% potential that's being lost, they'd be able to cover it or to achieve it. Now it is easier. We understand things better. Number one. Number two, because of that science, there are very good products now, very tailor-made. I mean, like your Superforce, for example.
The farmer doesn't know what Superforce is. At Dairy Networks, we manufacture minerals called Superforce Nation. I think, Willie, you can agree it's a game changer.
Yes, definitely a game changer. This I have seen on numerous dairy farms where it's been introduced. A lot of issues have changed, especially around reproduction. Reproduction, first I have to say that. And production. Those two things, Superforce Nation has worked wonders in the farms where it's been introduced.
Wow. 2011, the access, you are saying the access to information was limited. You'll only get it from the older generation.
Yeah, and the internet.
And the internet. You have also talked about the science. A lot has changed in the country. Has there been a significant improvement from maybe an age factor? Maybe the farmers you are interacting with when you started the consultancy, is there any something that is changing in terms of age? Has the climate affected, has the climatic changes affected the entire industry? Or maybe the issues to do with the milk market, are farmers getting better milk? What has there been some maybe diseases that have come out?
Okay, first and foremost, a lot of farmers I deal with are under 50. Sadly, them being under 50 means they are employed somewhere else. So this is your proverbial stock exchange thing they are having going on over there. But it gives confidence that the dairy industry is not about to go down. I mean, my case and why I had to shut down is not going to be too common throughout the dairy industry. There are people who can make it, okay? And because they have supplemental income that they can be able to support those dairy farms, it's easier for them to go through the rough times or tough times because they can be able to get from somewhere. I don't encourage that, but it's a safety net for the farm itself. And if it's good genetics and everything, there's potential for tomorrow and there's hope for tomorrow. So that's on the age part of it. In terms of the milk market itself, first and foremost, I think there's a lot more appreciation now for hygiene issues. I mean, back in the day, it was almost gangster's paradise. Find people adulterating milk, water, all sorts of funny things. It's good there's a bit of structured purchasing of milk. Though that single processor business is both advantageous and also disadvantageous because it takes away competition. So what you end up finding is, and I asked this, I bought a packet of milk for 50 shillings for years now. The price doesn't go up. And if it does go to 50, at most 60 shillings. Farm gate prices again are stagnant. But all the inputs are going up. Minerals, concentrates, all these other things you buy in the shop are just shooting up. Fuel costs go up. What does that mean? If you're buying silage,
the cost goes up.
Transport cost goes up. If you're harvesting your own tractors are using more expensive fuel than they were using when I was farming and things like those. I don't know how the industry can correct that in terms of pricing because the demand and supply issues and those kinds of things. But I think there's need for a bit of investigation into that because dairy farmers are not growing and thriving. A lot of farmers are like a beep. If if it wasn't for supplemental income, the people who are full-time farmers, they're not really growing. They are not. They're just there. They are treading water. So I really do wish there'd be more financial payback for the end farmer or at farm gate.
For now, it's 10 years since you started the dairy journey. How do you compare the production system and also the people approach towards a dairy business model those years and now?
I think there was more, at that time there was a lot more subsistent type farming thinking around dairy farming, and now there's a lot more business type thinking around dairy farming. I mean, even the forums that I'm on, once in a while you see figures, actual figures being discussed, production costs, discussions being had and things like those, which is fantastic. Because as the younger generation says, being woke, yeah, the dairy farmers now are a lot more woke than during our time. Remember what the small talk I had with farmers here, 20-something plus farmers, only 5 or 6 of them understood what I was saying. Now if I was to do the same thing, I think probably half of the farmers or more in attendance at that time would leave there having understood pretty much the zest of whatever I'm talking about at that time, if I was to have more or less the same training.
Now, there's this topic of business model that keeps on coming up, yeah? And especially as at Dairy Networks, we are very passionate about it. And this more touches on the startups and also the existing farms. Can I just work from for the future, yeah? Maybe 10 years time from now, I can project what will happen. Like, for instance, you are in Kiambu. We can all agree Kiambu is losing its superior genetics.
Yes.
That's a fact.
Yes.
As a farmer here in Kiambu, do you think I can figure out a business model around the future, bring it now, and work towards that 10 years?